Okay, so I've been asked to kind of talk about the path of an entrepreneur and some of my thoughts about that and things that I'm doing with it. So I thought that I would start with a little story. There's an entrepreneur who is being honored by his peers at an award dinner. Suddenly, there is a flash of light and God appears right there in the conference in front of the entrepreneur. He turns to the entrepreneur and said, "You have made such extraordinary contributions to technology, to your community, and I would like to reward you for everything that you've done. So you have a choice. You can have infinite wisdom, infinite wealth, or sheer utter beauty. Pick one." Well, without hesitation, the entrepreneur immediately says, "I want wisdom." "Done," says God. And with a cloud of smoke and a crack of lightning, off he goes. Well, the people in the room are kind of looking at each other and looking at the entrepreneur and are not quite sure what to do from here. And so after this long silence, someone from the back of the room yells, "Say something wise." So with his newfound wisdom, he pauses and he says, "I should have taken the money." Well, that maybe epitomizes what entrepreneur is all about. But my question for you is, so you want to be a technology entrepreneur. You want to create entrepreneurs in your country. The question is, why? Is it because you want to create jobs? You want to solve technological problems? You want to become famous? You want to be your own boss? You want to become wealthy? Maybe it's all of the above. Well, so are entrepreneurs born or are they made? I think there are many people that have many different opinions. This is kind of one of those chicken and egg kind of scenarios. But I have my own theory that I'd like to share with you. See, I believe all of us have been gifted with basically the same amount of talent. Much like a bucket of sand, and we all have the same amount of sand in our buckets. The unique thing is that if you were to take your table and have that sand spread out on that table in tens of thousands of different ways, each one of those representing some unique kind of talent or skill or specialty or ability to learn. That's how each of us have our own sand distributed and therefore our talents. Now our trick is to get down and look at where our piles are the biggest and where they are the smallest. And by doing that, we can figure out what it is that we were made for. Now, it doesn't mean we have to follow that path, but it is extraordinarily insightful to look at what capabilities you have and where are the areas of challenge. Because the real trick in life is to understand your abilities and then turn them into capabilities by focusing on them. Now, I believe that there are really two types of learning, two different kinds of intelligence, if you would. Some would argue there's 9 and there's a lot of different models. But when most Americans think about education or think about intelligence, they think about school and academics, reading, writing, math, science, geography, all of the academic learning. What I find so interesting is that there is very little correlation between academic success and life success. So there must be something different. Well, this is generally referred to as social and emotional learning. Some may know it as EQ or emotional intelligence. So what is that? It's a whole set of other kinds of life skills and character skills and and even entrepreneurial skills. In fact, I want to give each of you a little bit of homework that I think you'll find pretty interesting. And that is, next time you're in front of Google, type in characteristics of an entrepreneur. And what you'll get is page after page full of lists that characterize what entrepreneurship is all about. And so what are the things that they say entrepreneurship about? It's about setting goals, an ability to convey a vision. It's about being trustworthy, having a moral compass that guides you. It's about hard work and discipline, and about leadership, both leading teams, leading yourself, working within teams. It's this whole set of stuff and capabilities that our families have always been taught or have been asked to teach us, but sadly, in so many cases, they haven't been. I find it fascinating and very exciting, and I want to congratulate the MIT folks. You see, this set of learning that's going on here by the staff and the students that are putting on this kind of a conference and have done such a great job is truly an excellent example of experiential learning. And it's not the academic learning, it's the learning around how do you organize, how do you communicate, and how do you grow something. So my hat's off to you. So I thought I'd take a couple moments and tell you a little bit about my path, that of, I think, a fairly typical entrepreneur. When I was in high school, I worked a lot in academics. When I got into college, of course, I've got a degree in economics and computer science, but where I really spent my time was in organizing things and learning things, and much like putting on a conference like this. So when I got out of school, I joined a company called Pennzoil Company, which is an oil and gas company, and I was doing 3D modeling of subsurface reservoirs and programming. Wow, was that boring. I just couldn't do that. So very shortly from there, I said, I need to work with some people. I'd gone to a trade conference in computer graphics, which is what we were doing, and joined my first startup company. It was a company called Chromatics. I had 4 states that I was selling into. And lo and behold, within the first year, I accounted for 40% of the company's sales. So I got promoted, and then started teaching other people how to sell our product, and ended up on the road 6 days out of 7, and that was too much. So I turned, here's a great idea. I went and joined another startup company called Apollo Computer. Joined them at 18 million in sales. We grew that company in 5 years to 800 million in sales when we sold it to the Hewlett-Packard Company. It was at that time I realized and learned the value of stock options, and they're very good. So now I became an executive within the Hewlett-Packard Company. Wow. It reminded me just how much I am not a big company guy. So having now spent 7, 8 years growing startups and doing sales, maybe some of you have read the book Outliers, where they talk about you have to do something for 10,000 hours. Well, I'd been selling for 10,000 hours and was now pretty convinced that I could do that. So I decided that I was going to join a company, or I was going to start a company. So how do you do that? I didn't have any training in doing that. So my first step was starting to look at things in everyday life that I said, boy, I wish I had that, or wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And so I came up with a list of 17 different ideas. And I wrote little mini business plans on each one of those ideas. with things about how big is the market for this? Are there other competitors in here? And really the biggest one was, what would be my ability to pull this off? I had some money, but I didn't have a ton of money. And so I started looking around and ultimately decided to start a company called Paranet. Now what Paranet does and was designed to do, it was a time when we were moving from mainframe and mini computers to the desktop. And so it was pretty clear to me that we were going to have millions and millions of desktop computers all interconnected, but there were no systems, no processes, no security. How do you migrate stuff? How do you protect the data? None of that was in place for distributed computing, so we started doing that. So I went and talked with everybody who would talk to me about how do you start a company, what do you do? And I ended up working very closely with a guy I'd worked with at Chromatics, who was a friend of mine. He had gone off and done Silicon Graphics and a number of other really interesting companies. So we started working on this business plan, and the design was that I was writing the plan, he was helping to shoot holes in it, and that I was going to operate the company and he was going to fund it. It all seemed like a great idea until one day he calls me up, and then we were way down the road. We had interviewed employees, we started talking to customers, we were making commitments. He calls me up and says, listen, I've decided that I'm not going to fund you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start this company out in California, and you're going to have nothing to do with this. Terrific, Don. That was really a great idea. So here I am. He steals my idea. He's implementing it out in California. I am devastated. I am betrayed, and I'm flat-footed. So I took the only approach that an entrepreneur can do, says, I'm going to bootstrap this on my own. And so I took $20,000 out of savings, which was most of what I had left, and I went out and started Paranet. Well, Paranet went from me to some 1,400 employees in 6 years. We were profitable every single month in the company's history. We were entirely self-funded. The worst year in our company was 110% growth. We went from 0 to 27 offices all across the country. But we built this extraordinary culture because we paid a heck of a lot of attention to it. We were what by most every definition would be called a hyper-growth company. Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, twice Inc. Magazine, fastest growing companies. And we had this really clear vision about what we were going to do. Ultimately, we ended up selling the company to Sprint for $425 million in cash. Not a bad day. So what I thought I would share with you is some of the things that we learned along the way. Things that I found especially insightful that really helped us accomplish that goal, and you may find interesting as you decide to do yours. One of the first things, as I was talking to entrepreneurs about starting a company, that they asked me was, okay, so you're going to start a company, but how are you going to get out of it? Well, I thought that really curious. Here, I'm worried about how am I going to get it started, and they think that I should be worried about how am I going to get out of it. Well, as it turns out, that was one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got. Now, it kind of goes back to what's your goal. I mean, maybe your goal is that you want to start this business and you're going to do this for the rest of your life. You're going to retire in here and you're going to turn it over to your kids and you're going to turn it into a family business. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe what you want is to turn this thing into a rocket ship and take it public. Maybe it is you want to get it to a certain point, and the fun is in the process of creating these businesses, and then you're going to sell it to somebody else and go off and do it again. All of those are legitimate paths, but you got to think about that up front because it makes a huge amount of difference on what you're going to keep track of, how you're going to structure the company, and which way you're going to go. So know how to get out of the business before you get into it. The second was establishing a big, hairy, audacious goal. A vision for the company was one of the most powerful things that we ever did. For us, every single person that interviewed with us, every customer that we talked to, every employee who hired knew that we were going to grow to $100 million in 5 years and take the company public. You see, as an obligation, as an employer, as a company, what we have to share with our employees are three things. And without these three things, they can't be effective. And that is, where are we going? How are we going to get there? And what does that mean to me? Both mean to me in terms of career, in terms of what I do day to day so that I know how I'm contributing to the bottom line, and what it means to me in terms of how am I going to provide for my family. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What does it mean to me? And so everyone that came in was crystal clear about the goal. And then we talked about other hows, but we all knew where we were going. Lots of people talk about culture. And I cannot talk enough about culture. Every company has one. Just like every person in this room has a personality, every business has a personality, and that's a culture. Well, the thing about culture is you're going to have one whether you pay attention to it or not. So I want to strongly encourage you to pay attention as to what is the culture inside your organization, because that is going to determine the speed at which you can respond. Culture is, in fact, an enabler. It is what allows you to be a hyper-growth company or what causes you to be a slow-growth company. It's how employees hold each other accountable, and it's how companies determine standards for itself. So, number 4, I think you got to hire eagles, not ducks. See, there are winners, there are losers, there are leaders, and there are followers, there are eagles, and there are ducks. Well, as you know, eagles are prized and they are protected. Ducks, there's an open season and we kill ducks every year. You should do the same thing inside your company. A players hire A players, but B players hire C players. Don't let that happen in your organization. What you want to do is hire people that are so good they challenge you every single day. And when you do that, you will build a culture of excellence and you will constantly be getting better. And those folks who can't keep up, you need to help them find a new career path. It's really important. This is going to sound maybe like this isn't all that important. But you've got to be the simplest company to do business with? So let me just a show of hands, and the lights are up here, and it's kind of hard for me to see. Is there anybody in here who doesn't have enough problems? Go ahead. Raise your... Nobody? Your customers are the same way. They have all kinds of problems. What they want you to do is to come in and solve them. You know, it's really not that tough. Sales is understanding what it is that your customer wants and then helping them get it. Don't throw roadblocks in there that are crazy. It makes no sense. And when you're simple to do business with, you'll get customers a whole lot faster. When you're deciding what company you're going to do, pick a rising tide. You know, rising tides float all boats. And so even if you just end up being an average company, if the tide is going up, you're going up with it. So as you decide what you're going to do, pick rising tides. Now, one of our biggest challenges at Paranet was that we were doubling in size every single year. And here's what, I mean, obviously that's the right kind of problem to have, but a huge problem. Here's the issue with doubling in size. Every time you do it, every process you have in the company is now broken. So you have to come up with a model and a methodology where you are constantly staying 6 months ahead of the organization. That kind of planning is, in this day, where the only thing you can count on is change, is critical for you to put inside the organization. Now, what we were was essentially an internally funded franchise. I believe in strong people and giving them the power and the authority to accomplish great things. So we built, hey, wow, that's way better. Hi. So we essentially kind of operated like a Taco Bell. Even though we were doing IT network services, what we did is we gathered up best practices from all over our organization, and then we built branches that we could replicate in cities that would provide those best practices to organizations. Consistency and high quality is what your customers demand, and it's what you have to provide. You know, we had a simple model. This is going to be a long phrase, but it's pretty simple to understand. Do what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, for the price you said you'd do it for, and if you do that every single time, you'll never lose a customer. It turns out that that's a really rare thing, delivering against what you commit to. But when you do, and when you make it a habit, it puts you in your own kind of unique position. And finally, from lessons learned, is we had a thing that we call the new hire experience. So that every single one of our employees that joined Paranet, regardless of where they were around the country or around the world, they all came to Houston for a week-long, what we called a new hire experience. And we took them out in the woods and in cabins, and they spent time learning about what it is that we expect, what it is that we want, and we formed teams so that by the end of that week, they not only thought about what we're trying to accomplish in ways that we do, but they fully embraced it because they're involved in it. And one of our principal issues was fail fast. I want you to fail as fast as you can possibly fail. we're human beings. You know, we've got great ideas, we work hard, but we are going to fail. If the company creates a culture in which you ding people for failing, you'll begin receding. People don't take risks. People don't work as hard. You've got to allow people to fail. Now, if they fail at the same thing multiple times, well, that's a learning disability. That's duck-like behavior, and we shoot you. So you got to keep a delicate balance in that. We, at the end of 6 years, we decided to take the company public. We had Goldman Sachs, Alex Brown, Hambert and Quist, the A-team for technology companies at the time. They were putting us together, and we were about to go out on the road show. Interestingly enough, 2 months earlier, this company called International Network Systems, Don, who was supposed to fund me, went public, established this really great valuation for the industry. And so, although I hadn't predicted it at the time, he was actually very helpful in us going forward. The marketplace for technology stocks had dropped about 30% the week before we were going to go out on a roadshow. So we postponed our roadshow. I get a call from Bill Esri, the CEO of Sprint. He asked to come see me. And you know, he basically offered us in cash what we were going to do at the public offering, and we ultimately chose to do that. And as I said, sold that for $425 million, and that was a really good day. So, you know, I fulfilled my employment agreement and left the company. And I'm kind of wandering around, just like when we sold Apollo to HP, going, well, what am I going to do next? So I started thinking about what was important to me. And, you know, I don't know how you can say this any other way, but I hit a home run. And it was because we worked really hard and we had a lot of people involved, and I was just proud to be a part of that. And so what I decided to do was to give back, and wanted to, so I started looking at what is it that I really wanted to do, and what is it that I could do for youth. So I formed a foundation called the Holthouse Foundation for Kids, and I put a bunch of money into it, and decided that what I wanted to do was to help at-risk youth. At-risk youth, defined for me, was those kids that are as bright and as capable as any in all the world, but for a whole host of reasons are not growing up in an environment that's conducive to becoming healthy, happy, contributing members of our world. In other words, and sadly, this is typically, they were poor, they had maybe one parent or no parents, and they were going nowhere fast. So what I want to do is figure out what it is that I could do for them. So I took this learning journey around the country, and I went to all of these different programs that said that we're having great success in serving this community. And I asked the kind of questions that you would ask. I don't want to know how to address the symptoms. I want to know what are the issues and what is it that I can do that will have the greatest long-term effect. Well, what I learned was, interestingly, what I already knew. And that was that there's two kinds of education. There's academics, and there's social and emotional. And that what these kids weren't getting was the life skills, the character, and the entrepreneurial kind of mindset that they needed to break out of that kind of world. So I started an organization called Prepared for Life. and I think that name is indicative of what it is that we were trying to do. And so we started doing a bunch of after-school programs that were teaching them about communications and hard work and determination and setting goals and all that kind of stuff. Until one day, my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, comes to me and says, Daddy, can I have a turtle? A turtle? What are you going to do with a turtle? Oh, they're so great. I said, well, listen, with a turtle, if you pet it, the head goes inside, you got a rock. Well, what are you going to do? So you've got 3 dogs, 2 cats, you've got a tank full of fish, we've got hamsters and rabbits. No, you're not going to get a turtle. Well, Lissa's a pretty persistent little girl, and the next morning, she comes bounding into the bedroom at 6 a.m. with this great idea. Daddy, let's do a lemonade stand. Now, I'd been out kind of late that night before, and about the last thing on earth I wanted to do was a lemonade stand. But before you know it, there I am out on Memorial Drive in Houston, Texas, doing a lemonade stand, going through the most amazing experience that my daughter and I had ever had. I mean, we're sitting there in the cars, you know, we're on a busy street. Listen, Dad, why aren't they stopping? I don't, you know, here I am, I've learned all this great stuff. Well, I don't know, Lissa, what do you think? She's, well, maybe they can't see our sign. So we moved our sign, things got a little bit better. And before you know it, we're like an hour into this, and all of a sudden, Lissa's got this handful of cash in her hand. She goes, Dad, look how much money I've made. Well, it was at that point that I explained to her the difference between revenue and profits. You thought that I had shot the girl. I mean, what a bad idea this is. Before you know it, we're talking about how the ice chest is part of the capital equipment of the corporation, and we've got fixed costs and variable costs, and you know, we're selling perishable goods, and she's listening. It's like blowing me away. And that's when I figured it out. Lissa didn't just want the turtle. She wanted the turtle palm, the little turtle pond with the palm tree, and you know, she wanted the whole thing. That's what she was going to do with this money. I couldn't get it out of my head. That here it is, through this experience, an opportunity, maybe, for us to change the world. I want to show you a quick 1.5-minute video, and then I'm going to kind of finish up.
Trajectory of our country. And that's where you come in.
Here we go.
Mom, Dad, can I have $10 to buy the latest piece of overpriced molded plastic?
Sounds familiar, right? We have a whole generation of kids like Anna growing up all over the country that have learned plenty about how to spend money, but almost nothing about how to generate it. Anna was learning lots of things, but not the decision-making and leadership skills that she will need to be a business leader of tomorrow. Fortunately for Anna, she had the opportunity last year to participate in Lemonade Day. There, she learned how to run a business, learned how to make a profit, learned how to make critical decisions, and most importantly, she learned that she could do it. She could accomplish her goals. One day of selling lemonade changed the trajectory of her life. Pretty sweet, right? Anna's story is pretty incredible, and there are thousands more like her all across the economic and social spectrum, which is cool. But what would it look like for our future if it were millions of kids instead? That's something that could change the trajectory of our country. And that's where you come in. See, for every kid like Anna, there was a person, a leader, or an organization who used their business knowledge to support, teach, and build into her. They are using their skills and know-how from today to train the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. They understand that Lemonade Day is way more than just a one-time event. It's a chance to change the direction of our country and every life involved. Find out more at lemonadeday.org.
So we did this thing with Lissa, and we decided to do Lemonade Day the next year. So we went from doing one So the next year we did 2,600 lemonade stands. Then we did 11,000, then 28,000, 38,000. We start, this internet thing, it's kooky. It goes everywhere. We're getting phone calls from Azerbaijan and South Africa and places that want to do Lemonade Day. Well, today, we're in 40 cities. This year, we'll do 300,000 registered lemonade stands with about 500,000 kids doing it. The impact is crazy. How it works is pretty simple. We work with every kind of youth-facing partner that there is, whether it's private schools, public schools, neighborhoods, faith-based organizations, after-school programs, youth groups, you name it. And we provide them the materials, and they integrate Lemonade Day into their program. And so what happens is they take a mentor, pair it with the youth, and they go step by step through this 14-step process on how do you start, own, and operate their very own business. It is changing the way kids see the world. That instead of being victims, they now have an opportunity. And I think one of our kids really, we asked them, what is it that you got out of Lemonade Day? And he said, well, what you told me to do was to set a goal, and then you taught me how to make a plan and a budget on how I could achieve that goal. And then we worked really hard against that goal, and you know what happened? I did it. I achieved that goal. That's not so different than what each of you are trying to do in helping others become entrepreneurs. You got to set a goal. You got to make a plan. You got to work the heck out of that plan, because the harder you work, the luckier you'll get, and you can achieve that dream. We think Lemonade Day is going to produce millions of entrepreneurs, because our goal is that every single child in America is going to do a lemonade stand. Now, Google became our national partner last year, and they're helping us get the word out. We believe we will do 1 million lemonade stands in a single day in 100 cities in America. And at that point, it becomes a tipping point. For me, this has been really fun, because growing a nonprofit, most people think nonprofits are different than growing a business. To me, a nonprofit is the same thing as a business. It just has favorable tax status. So I'm here for you. I'm really stoked up about what's going on in this conference, and to the extent that I can help anybody in here, come up to me, let's talk. I'd love to help. Thank you very much. Thanks.